Good afternoon. Mr. Simpson has asked me to get things started for today's hearing, so I want to welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome our witnesses, Dr. Franklin Orr, Undersecretary for Science and Energy, and Dr. Cherry Murray, Director of the Department of Energy's Office of Science. Dr. Orr, it's good to see you again. It was great to participate with you at Lab Day on the Hill last fall. What a great turnout we had to see firsthand the great work our national labs are doing to solve so many tough national and international problems. Dr. Murray, thank you for coming by to meet with me in January. Appreciated that so much. It's great to have you here. This is your first appearance, I believe, before our subcommittee. And thank you both and welcome. Dr. Orr and Dr. Murray, the budget request provides $5.6 billion for the Office of Science, a 4% increase over last year's level. The Office of Science has helped usher in some of the most important scientific breakthroughs in the 20th century and will continue to support important innovations in the future. However, the balance between supporting core research activities that maintain U.S. leadership in energy sciences while also planning for new experiments will be one of the major challenges you face as we move into the next phase of scientific discovery. The request assumes that the Office of Science Research, Operation, and Construction goals can be met, but increasing budgets are not a given. Your challenge is to ensure that the new facilities don't come at the expense of your research mission. I look forward to discussing with you both how the Office of Science will make these hard choices and continue to ensure our country's leadership in the scientific community. Dr. Murray, please ensure that the hearing record questions for the record and any supporting information requested by the subcommittee are delivered in final form to us no later than 4 weeks from the time you receive them. Members who have additional questions for the record will have until the close of business Friday to provide them to the subcommittee office. With that, I will turn to our ranking member, Ms. Kaptur, for her opening statement. Ms. Kaptur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You look good in that position. And we want to welcome back Dr. Orr and Dr. Murray for being with us today and for the very laudable job that you both do. The United States is known and respected around the world as a leader in innovation. Scientific research continues to yield important discoveries that change the way we live and work, from cell phones to high-yield crops to biotech medicines. At the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Paris, President Obama joined world leaders from 19 other countries to launch Mission Innovation. The initiative seeks to double federal clean energy research and development investments government-wide over the next 5 years. As part of this effort, the Office of Science receives an increase of $276 million from this year's funding levels. I hope you will share your thoughts how this effort will support innovation in the public sphere. We must harness the work of our best and brightest to drive domestic growth and help make American manufacturing globally competitive. While the value of funding scientific and other research is well established, federal resources remain limited and will remain so for the near term, it appears. Research, especially in science, can provide enormous value, but it is a long-term and sometimes indirect investment that is too easily sacrificed for short-term concerns. It would be helpful to hear from you about the long-term consequences of this kind of underinvesting in science and research. We need to understand the trade-offs that we are making in the name of budget scarcity. Scientific exploration can sometimes provide opportunities for immediate benefit. In certain cases, tools and equipment designed for research can be applied to manufacturing processes to increase efficiency or improve product quality. Advanced devices and computers can help advance our understanding of basic science and help companies find solutions to challenging technical hurdles. With this in mind, I want to touch briefly on the national labs, which are rightly viewed as a national asset, and aren't they that? Coming from an area without a national lab, as most members do, I continue to wrestle with how the labs can play a significant transformational role for organizations beyond their boundaries and help jumpstart American innovation, including in manufacturing, but not solely there, in other parts of the country. I hope you will share your thoughts on this and the other questions I posed, and I look forward to your insight, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time.
Thank you, Ranking Member Capter. Dr. Orr, your opening statement.
Thank you very much, Representative Fleischman. I appreciate a chance to talk to you and others of the subcommittee again this afternoon. And I'll just thank the subcommittee for the support you provided, as I said earlier at the Applied Energy hearing, for the support you provided in the budget for this year. We're working hard on that, and we look forward to working with you as we work on this next budget. So I'm glad to have Cherry Murray here with me today. She's the confirmed director of the Office of Science, confirmed in December, and I can tell you that based on a year of experience in office, there's more than enough for all of us to do. So I'm very glad to have her with us. The Office of Science, of course, if the labs are a crown jewel for the country, the Office of Science is really the keeper of the crown jewel, and indeed a tremendous asset to the nation. It supports research on the frontiers of science to enhance our understanding of nature, and also to advance the energy, economic, and national security of the United States. We steward in the Office of Science 10 of the 17 national labs, as I know you know, and 28 state-of-the-art national science user facilities. And this enterprise supports more than 24,000 researchers at 300 institutions across the nation, including some in Ohio. I'll note that your folks are definite users of the national labs. These are really fundamentally important to not only to the science enterprise, but also to our industry. The ability to use the X-ray light sources, for example, to characterize materials at the smallest scale, the spallation neutron source at Oak Ridge. These are facilities that allow us to evaluate materials for the most advanced energy applications. A favorite example for me is the little turbine blades made by additive manufacturing. Those, you can use the spallation neutron source to image the residual stresses that are in those little turbine blades. And if those are appropriately handled, that turbine blade will hold together in the aircraft engine the way it's supposed to. So really the science facilities have plenty of applications in industry as well. The President's request, as Chairman said, is $5.672 billion. We have that as a 6.1% increase from the FY16 enacted level. The request takes the first step in fulfilling the government's mission innovation pledge. As the ranking member observed, is an initiative across 20 nations to double public clean energy research and development over the next 5 years. The effort is complemented by commitments from private investors through the Breakthrough Energy Coalition and no doubt other investors as well. To continue global momentum and accelerate clean energy technology development, the Department's request aims to further accelerate the Office of Science's innovative work that puts America at the forefront of the global clean energy race. Basic research supported by the Department's Office of Science will be crucial to enabling that transition to a low-carbon, secure energy future. Fundamental research is the key to developing truly transformative technologies that could radically change the energy landscape. It provides the scientific foundations for clean energy innovation through use-inspired fundamental research on energy production, conversion, storage, transmission, and use. And actually, many of the things that we talked about in the hearing this morning have traced their origins to work that was fundamental work that was supported by the Office of Science in its earliest days. The increased investments as part of mission innovation will support a broad-based strategy for accelerating the innovation process. The strategy emphasizes investments targeted to support innovative platforms for early-stage research and technology development. An example of this would be the successful Energy Frontier Research Centers. We have 32 of those, if I remember correctly now. But this will enable us to fully fund up to 5 new awards in the area of subsurface science, with an emphasis on advancing imaging of geophysical and geochemical signals. The subsurface plays important roles across the energy spectrum, so that would be a value there. The request also sustains DOE's role as the largest federal sponsor of basic research in the physical sciences. DOE supports fundamental research and scientific user facilities in a variety of scientific disciplines, from nuclear and high-energy physics to basic energy and biological research. The research conducted in these areas helps us achieve predictive understanding of matter and energy on microscopic scales, as well as complex phenomena such as the planet's climate and biological systems. In funding this cutting-edge research, the request continues science's tradition of successfully building and operating world-class facilities that enable researchers from across the country and the globe to conduct groundbreaking research. This includes design for a reconfigured international long baseline neutrino facility hosted at Fermilab, initial construction for the deep underground neutrino experiment in South Dakota, and continued construction of the facility for rare isotope beams. The request also builds on the successes of the bioenergy research centers with additional funds to expand technology transfer activities during the last year of the 10-year program. An area of priority for all of us with relevance across the whole innovation chain is high-performance computing. U.S. leadership in science and industry is, of course, crucial to sustaining American economic competitiveness and developing new technologies in energy and other fields. In line with the President's National Strategic Computing Initiative, our goal is to produce an exascale supercomputing environment capable of meeting 21st century scientific challenges by the mid-2020s. Finally, I'll mention that my job as Undersecretary is to foster productive links between the science and energy programs. And one way we've done this is by establishing cross-cutting initiatives to accelerate progress on key national priorities. The expertise in the Office of Science provides the scientific underpinnings for several of these crosscuts, including the energy-water nexus, exascale computing, and subsurface science. And this year, there is an additional cross-cutting effort proposed on advanced materials for energy innovation. So altogether, the Office of Science's budget supports path-breaking discovery while advancing American competitiveness and leadership in scientific research. Thank you for the opportunity to talk here today and to answer questions if we can do so.
Thank you, Dr. Orr, and I know that many of the members have questions for both of you all. I'm going to begin by recognizing Ranking Member Capper for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. This committee has been ensuring support for American manufacturing for a number of years, and the department's budget request continues to have a significant emphasis in this area. Doctors Orr and Murray, how do the major science facilities, such as light sources, support American manufacturing, and have you made any changes since last year to increase support for American industry?
So thank you for that question. I actually, I was thinking about some version of that question as I mentioned the idea of using the X-ray light sources to characterize advanced materials of all kinds. If you think about the energy systems, what they do is they convert some primary energy resource, could be wind, could be sun, could be fossil or nuclear resources, into energy services like electricity or heat or transportation. Almost every one of those, if you think about the process of building more efficient energy conversion methods, at their heart, they're fundamentally material sciences processes. They might require higher temperatures or pressures. They might require standing up under other harsh environments. They need to last a long time, they need to be cheap to produce, and they need to perform successfully. So one of the ways that we can get there is to use our ability now to control material structures at very small scale, so-called nanostructured materials are one version of that. And when you couple that with understanding material properties of being able, for example, to design catalysts that are everywhere in chemical processing and batteries and fuel cells, and to predict those properties computationally, when we can do those things effectively, then we can design new materials that will serve us well and figure out how to do that with cycle times that are shorter than they might otherwise be. So the fundamental science that goes with these things is an essential component of being able to get to advanced manufacturing methods. Now, there's lots to do in between, and of course that's the purview of a variety of our programs. But in the end, the ability to use the user facilities to characterize all kinds of systems and to study their properties at the smallest scales, those enable practically everything else.
I'm going to push you a little bit, Doctor. And the question related to your reply here is, what thoughts do you have on how the Department of Energy and the national labs can improve their interaction with industry?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to give you a real-life example of what happened, because I attempted to work with your labs. I won't say which ones. And I come from a part of the country, as I said in the prior session, where we have massive manufacturing, massive. But we also have agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
And as I looked at the amount of jobs that have been outsourced from our region, and actually in Indianapolis, Carrier just announced it's moving to Monterrey, Mexico, 2,100 jobs. I thought, how are we going to grow jobs here? One area where we can is in agriculture, but industrial agriculture. So 2 years ago, I went to one of the labs. I said, look, I need your help. Here's an example of an industry where we need material science to develop a better four-season canopy, more energy efficient, more light sensitive in the sense wavelengths matter, frequencies matter in the production of plants. Mm-hmm. And I said, so I want you to help me design a new envelope, because for us to be successful, we can't have a third to a half of the bottom line being energy. We've got to figure out how to control the energy issue, and we've got to have robust plant life in there, and we've got to cut the carbon footprint, because we can't keep shipping half our fruits and vegetables from California. We've got to empower other parts of the country, and we can do it because we got the water. Took almost 1 year and 3 quarters, and one of your famous labs got back to me and said, this isn't our job. This is the Department of Agriculture's job. Well, I was very disappointed, because the Department of Agriculture is using old technology. Mm-hmm. But what happened was the private sector did something incredible. They just invested $200 million or $175 million, a company from Canada in our region, to build a state-of-the-art, not new material science, but using the materials we have rather well, mm-hmm. and the waste heat off of a steel company called North Star, CO2, 200-acre greenhouse undercover. It is going to supply Kroger Company, which just bought Harris Teeter about 1.5 years ago. That one place is going to expand exponentially because of what's going on in the environment. But I sort of look back at that experience with DOE and I think to myself, and I'm not blaming you, I'm not blaming anybody. Again, it's a resistance to place and to dealing with reality on the ground, trying to apply this high science to real production. And I still place the challenge out there for my region of the country: help us cut the energy use in these industrial agriculture facilities from 1/3 to half to less than 10%.
Yeah,
how do we do that? And measure the nutrients, water, work with light rays in a manner that is off the charts so that we target a certain type of ray to a certain type of plant. I ask myself, do we really need light permeable coverings, or could we do this in rooms like this? There's a lot of LED lighting going on now that we're using for plant production in some of our cities. So I really want DOE involved in this. I think it could help to give rebirth to the Great Lakes. Mm-hmm. So I'm not being selfish here. I'm trying to be innovative, but that is a real thing that happened with DOE, and now we're saying, can DOE and DOA work together? Why should we waste 2 years on this? I mean, what a waste of time. We should have had cooperation like that. And so I point that out as a concern to mine. So my question is, what thoughts do you have on how the Department of Energy and the national labs can improve their interaction with industry?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I meant to answer that the first time around, but I got off on the nanostructured materials. One of the things we actually are doing as part of my office is to work on better ways to do that. So we've established a new Office of Technology Transitions, for example, and we are implementing a requirement of the Energy Policy Act to establish a technology commercialization fund that will help provide some support for interactions like this with the national labs. And then we've also just created a Clean Energy Investment Center that is a way to help industry see more quickly into the national lab system for ideas that they might want to engage upon, and also to streamline the cooperative research agreements that we use to foster these kinds of interactions when it makes sense to do so. So we recognize that the process of dealing with industry is slower than it should be, and we are working to try to change that.
Well, I would just make a formal request when you're ready, hopefully it won't take 2 years, to find a way for your agency to interact with our major growers in our part of the country. And then, by the way, that particular corridor stretches from Erie, Pennsylvania to Kalamazoo, Michigan, through all of northern Ohio. It is a massive production platform with fresh water. And we need four-season solutions because of what's happening with climate. And then earlier I had asked about the automotive platform, the manufacturing. If you could find the right people within the department somewhere, I would bring everybody together who cares about energy in the industrial agriculture field and in vehicular manufacturing to see how they could relate to you, because we don't have a lab in our area.
Well, we talked about this some this morning, but we do in fact have quite a lot of interaction with the vehicle manufacturers. Again, part of it through the lightweighting kinds of activities, partly in all things like Super Truck and the various efficiency moves and so on. So we do work with the automotive manufacturers, the vehicle manufacturers, quite a bit in a variety of ways.
I will just end with this, Mr. Chairman. One of the automotive plants I represent, which is a big one, the North American president of that operation, I was with him at a ribbon cutting, and I said, "What can I do to help you?" He goes, "Help me figure out what to do about energy in this particular plant." So I just put that out there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right.
Request.
It's a good opportunity because to the extent that energy reduction can be achieved, they often pay back very quickly. It's not. It wasn't in your district, but I visited a plant, a General Mills plant in Iowa that makes Cheerios. And I could observe that they contribute hugely to national sanity, because anybody that has a toddler, you put them in the high chair in the restaurant with a batch of Cheerios, and then everything's okay for a while. Anyway, but they managed to reduce their energy use in the plant by doing the kinds of things that you talked about: waste heat recovery, using waste heat in one part of the plant somewhere else, reduce their energy use by about 25%. With some of it was lighting. There were a variety of things that they did, but by paying careful attention, they could make substantial reductions, and so that's a good thing to do.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Kapter. I'm going to have a question for Dr. Orr and then a question for Dr. Murray, and then we'll continue with our other members. Dr. Orr, several years ago, short-sighted changes were made to the management structure at the Department of Energy Oak Ridge Federal Office. These problems have removed incentives for the many Department of Energy program offices to work together in an integrated way. The program offices actually like this setup since it's easier for them to focus on their own priorities. But this works against the best interests of the taxpayers and stifles the kind of innovation and integration that the department strives to foster in its management emphasis. The changes have also resulted in serious conflicts with elected officials on top Department of Energy priorities. Yesterday, I asked Secretary Moniz to take a close look to find an incremental solution to reconnect these important program offices. My request of you, sir, is I ask you to join in this effort to work with me to find a solution. Will you do that, sir?
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. Dr. Murray, we heard Dr. Orr refer to high-performance computing in his opening remarks, and I thank you for your prioritization. I was very pleased to see that the Department of Energy's budget request includes continued investments to advance exascale computing, and that the department has created a more rigorous project management structure to keep this effort on track to develop and deploy an exascale system by the mid-2020s. I know the department has a program called Coral to jointly purchase the next generation of leadership class computing systems that will deliver greater capabilities and better energy efficiency, which are key milestones on the path to exascale. What will it take to make sure that Coral systems are the fastest and most powerful supercomputers in the world when they come online in 2018? And how many petaflops will they need in order to be the best in the world systems?
Thank you for the question. Of course, exascale computing is absolutely essential for our national security and our economic security, as well as putting us #1 in science. So it is a very high priority for the country and certainly the department. One of the things that it will take to put Coral machines at a very high level of performance is what we have in place now, which is a collaboration with industry, a collaboration between NNSA, the national security part of the department, and Office of Science, together working with industry to develop these machines. This is not just a purchase of a machine. It is actually co-development. One of the things that is going to be critical, and you of course know that the first Coral machine is slated to go into Oak Ridge.
Yes, ma'am.
Which I would say is one of our flagship Office of Science facilities. The 3 laboratories who are working on this machine are Oak Ridge, Argonne, and Lawrence Livermore. And as you may be aware, I was deputy director at Lawrence Livermore back some years ago. So I know the capabilities of the people in the NNSA. These machines are critically important for our stockpile stewardship mission. They are also critically important for doing the best science, and as Dr. Orr said, we can have much better understanding from the atomic scale up to the size of a turbine blade in our materials simulation, where we could simulate them in conditions that we don't wish to have in the laboratory, such as turbine blades blowing apart, for example. And in order to do this, we need to have the project mindset and a goal in mind. The goal for the Coral machine that is going into Oak Ridge will be around 200 petaflops, and that will put it as a world class. As you are all aware, we are in a neck-to-neck fight with the Chinese on machine speeds. We want capable machines that don't just do flops, but actually run programs. that are dealing with big data as more and more of our science experiments and more of what industry needs is big data, which means machine learning, and it probably means new architectures. So I am very, very, it is one of my highest priorities to make sure that this stays on track, and this is why we're projectizing it.
Thank you, Dr. Murray. Mr. Vislowski.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. For either witness, if you could tell me what a cross-cut program is for the department?
Sure, I can do that. These work on problems that really demand expertise that come from all the way across the whole department, that have a variety of applications that don't just fit in the specific organizational approach that we have. An example would be our grid modernization effort. On the one hand, it's about how the transmission and distribution system works, but it also involves the fundamentals of high performance computing in optimization kinds of setting and simulations of very complex phenomena. Another would be our water energy nexus, because water gets used in all kinds of energy applications, and at the same time it also we use lots of energy to move water around, and 40% of the water that's withdrawn from our lakes and rivers goes to the downstream end of a power plant, for example.
I appreciate that explanation. According to the testimony, in the office, there's 32 Energy Frontier Research Centers,
Right.
2 Energy Innovative Hubs, 3 Bioengineering Research Centers, and 5 cross-cut R&D programs. Right. In the 17 budget, apparently there will be 5 more Energy Frontier Research Centers added. Industry linkages for the bioenergy research centers will be expanded, and there will be enhanced role for the cross-cut programs, and the office is steward of 10 DOE labs.
Mm-hmm, that's correct.
That's a lot of irons in the fire. Mm-hmm. Who coordinates the priorities as far as research and the consistency of research, given that you're at the Department of Energy?
Mm-hmm. So
a lot of things going on here.
There are lots of things going on, and we would argue that's a good thing. In the Office of Science, for example, the Energy Frontier Research Centers are a mechanism that we have used to bring together teams of people to work on use-inspired applications of the example I used earlier was the material science side of things.
When you say use-inspired, what does that mean?
Well, that means a place. Well, so I'll give you an example. I mentioned earlier that catalysts appear in all kinds of devices, fuel cells, batteries, chemical process industries, those kinds of things. So a use-inspired effort would be one where we develop our ability to go from absolutely first principles and calculate the performance of some exotic combination of metals or some configuration of the catalyst that make it more effective. So to go from first principles, but to do that. Now, it's use-inspired in the sense that once you can do that, then you can design all kinds of things for specific uses.
So who ends up coming up with those ideas, and who is coordinating that pure, if you would, and applied research? And how often at some point do you say this is not working out and we have a finite number of dollars in our budget and we're going to cease and desist?
Well, the Office of Science, I'm putting words in Jerry's mouth here, but the Office of Science evaluates Energy Frontier Research Centers periodically. Sometimes they're extended, and sometimes they're not. So that's one version of this, and they think hard about the priorities going forward and where there are good opportunities
Is there
for new
one
ones.
office someplace that
May I-
looks at all of these?
May I, well, that would be me, I think, or actually Pat. So the Office of Science has a prioritization method which is tried and true that it has used for at least 20 years when I was on one of their, in fact, it was Pat's Basic Energy Sciences Advisory Committee. So they have federal advisory committees. They report to me every one of our programs. We, the programs, charge the basic energy sciences for the Energy Frontier Research Centers with the prioritization of what is important, what are the scientific gaps. So we don't do applied research, we do fundamental
So it is your office,
research.
I know my time's limited, if I
Yeah.
could just ask one
Sure.
last kind of follow. There's a proposal in the budget for 5 more frontier. Were people sending requests in? Was it internally generated? Were there 20 proposals and you picked 5?
No, everything that we do is competed. And everything that we do is carefully thought out with the either subcommittees of these advisory committees holding a large number of workshops. For example, the basic research needs workshops are now probably 40 of them, something like that. And from those workshops, there was one on subterranean. You know, what is it that we as the industry or science or anybody in the world cannot do in the subsurface right now? A large number of workshops then written up with the priorities of the scientific community, including industry coming in. From that, we provide a funding opportunity announcement
And a
that
competition.
says, here's what was found at this workshop. We cannot do the imaging of subsurface well enough. Give us your proposals. A bunch of proposals will then come in, and then a panel,
We'll make a
which is-
selection.
scientists will
Thank
make
you.
a selection.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
And
Mr.
then
Chairman.
we review them annually.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Veslowski. Before I go to Mr. Fortenberry, Dr. Dahmer, it's good to see you again. Thank you for being with us today. Mr. Fortenberry.
Thank you. We're in the final phase of the Bioenergy Research Center funding. What has been the outcome?
Well, I would say that of the ones that I've visited, they each have very interesting results and lots of positive contributions. There's the Great Lakes Center that's worked on a variety of plant systems. There's the UC Berkeley, Lawrence Berkeley effort that has worked on various bioenergy systems. Really, quite a lot has been accomplished there. Maybe I'll ask.
I was just going to look up my statistics, but as I recall, there have been licenses to industry. 9 companies spun off, and more coming. There have been engineered microbes that are now in the industry. There are new processes and new software for simulating how to do bioreactors.
Are there plans to propose continuing this funding?
The funding will, in FY17, it will be the last year of these bioengineering research centers, the 10th year. And the intention is in that year to recompete new bioenergy, but also biomanufacturing centers. These centers could propose to continue, they can certainly enter the competition, but the thought is that a new competition is right for it now.
And define biomanufacturing.
So, for example, it would be wonderful if we could engineer microbes to manufacture polymers. So right now we use oil. We are going to run out of oil at some point. If we could use corn stover instead and use yeast that's manufactured, are one of the really interesting science tidbits is someone has actually manufactured diatoms in the sea to be part of a manufacturing process, starting with methane, and adding OH.
And on the EATER project? Well, there's no further reason to continue this discussion, I guess.
I'll have to get back to you with the exact number. We have that, but it's not currently lodged in my brain unless Pat has a number in her brain.
Well, it's a big number.
Yes.
It's had its problems.
Mm.
What is its potential?
Yeah. So maybe I could just say a word about where we are in that process. There, as you observed, there have been some issues of schedule and cost. They have a new director who's put in place some new systems to look at all that. They have a new proposed timescale that's being reviewed by the member countries. And
how's the coordinating entity? Who is the coordinating entity?
it's the EATER it's the EATER organization.
So how much do we refine or impact that culture?
Well, I think we had a lot to do with arguing for significant changes in the way it operated and and a much more rigorous cost estimation and time estimation process. And we also asked for an independent review of both of those things, which is underway now.
So you know the difficulties of design by committee,
Mm-hmm.
and then add on that design by international committee,
Right.
and you got a recipe for potential stagnation.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it's an unknown outcome here. I recognize it's experimental and frontier type research, but it's been going on a long time, and it doesn't seem to have produced any positive results.
Well, they are definitely under construction. The facility in the United States is well along the way in meeting our commitments.
Well, let me
to-
ask you
to,
that there. Our own domestic experiments, are they
Mhm.
showing any promise in this area?
Mhm.
arena?
We continue to work hard on the fundamentals of the behavior of high density, high temperature plasmas, and those are part of building the understanding it will take to design future machines. I think it's still true that in terms of getting to the DT burn, the deuterium tritium reaction, EATER is still the best opportunity out there to get to that, but it is a big, hard problem and a big, complicated machine to do that. So, our strategy so far has been to try to add some rigor to that whole process and do what you said, which is to build a project management culture as part of that will deliver that on time and with stable costs.
And what are the projections for, or the timeline for completion, first experiments, potential outcomes?
Yeah, current projection for timeline is first plasma by mid-2020s, so say 2025, and then DT burn in the 2030s range.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Valadao.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Good afternoon. Dr. Murray, the Office of Science supports 5 light sources located across the country at 4 national labs. Last year, the acting director said it was a high priority of the Office of Science and the department to maintain U.S. leadership in the light source capabilities, such as those at the Berkeley lab, which I was able to see last year. Can you describe what makes these light sources different from each other, and do we have 5 light sources to keep up with demand, or are there scientific capabilities that make each of these light sources unique?
Thank you for the question. That's actually a very easy question to answer. The answer is yes.
There's follow-up.
They are unique. The ALS is our lowest wavelength light source. It has unique properties where you can actually go in. First of all, if you're going to look for what's called soft matter, otherwise known as living things, or polymers or liquid crystals, that's exactly the wavelength range you want to use. Also, you can hit resonances with various chemicals or various atomic structures that you can't with higher X-rays. So if you want to do certain type of experiment, you would want to go to ALS. It has, as you're probably aware, because they probably told you, they wish to do an upgrade to stay at the world class. And actually, I will say, we wish that all of our light sources remain at world class. Each of them has from 3,000 to 5,000 users, and they're oversubscribed by at least a factor of 3. We have to turn people away.
All right, and then so what is the U.S. position relative to other countries when it comes to light sources, and what is the Office of Science's plan to moving forward to meet scientific needs in the future?
Yeah, so we are, I would say, competing with Europe and Japan and China for the best light source facilities. Currently, we are in good shape, but we need to make sure that we have the upgrades that all of the light sources need, and they're upgraded on a schedule so that they do remain world class. We currently have a charge to the Basic Energy Sciences, which runs the light sources, advisory committee to look at all the proposed upgrades in basic energy science and ask the question, is it world-class science? Will these provide world-class science? And second, are they ready for an upgrade now? Have they worked out the engineering parts enough so that we could consider putting them in line for an upgrade? Our plan is to, of course, balance research with facility construction, but we have to have world-class facilities. So our plan would be to do upgrades in a rolling fashion, just as we rolling fashion upgrade our computers.
Okay. And for Dr. Orr, it's clear that from increases provided in the Office of Science, that construction increases, XSL computing, optimal facility operations are the highest priorities for this account. However, trade-offs between running facilities at full capacity, research support, and construction of new technologies will have to be made in the coming years. Can you discuss the strategic future of the Office of Science given a flat budget scenario, and what are the Office of Science's greatest strengths, and how can we improve them in light of flat funding scenarios?
Well, I would say that given my vantage point of looking across all the programs, the research programs in science and energy at DOE, the Office of Science, I think, actually has the most rigorous process for thinking about what priorities are and trying hard to balance the needs for the facilities, but also to have to support the research communities that make use of them. Dr. Murray also mentioned that we make careful use of the science advisory committees to help us think through where the research opportunities are, where the best, the highest priority investments should be made, and we will absolutely continue to use that mechanism going forward as we make the tough trade-offs. You know, in some sense, assembly of every budget is one where you ask the question of balance of investment across the portfolio, but also where is the next, where can we invest the next dollar for the highest scientific return for the country. So we're absolutely committed to do that in whatever funding environment we find ourselves in.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Dr. Orr and Dr. Murray. I wanted to go into the advanced scientific computing research arena that's been already spoken of. It's been clear that it is a priority and it's important, just as the discussion around the issue of the light source discussion you had with Mr. Valadeo. So with those two in mind, in light of the budget request proposals, there's an increase for advanced scientific computing research within the Office of Science. And we know that the national labs have an incredible computing resource. You know, we're probably the top 10 most capable supercomputers in the world. But every sector of our society has become dependent on growth in computing performance in order to continue to drive innovation in science and technology. But our nation's leadership in advanced computing is increasingly being challenged, as you have said, by other countries. So how will this proposed budget be used to keep the U.S. at the forefront of computing technology? And then if you can provide us with an update on development of the plans in terms of moving the DOE to provide a report to provide a report on a plan that develops the exascale computing systems. So we need that kind of information in order to, I guess, sustain the increase in budget, but there's always that problem that you described,
Yeah.
balancing your budget and trying to find that priority.
Yeah, let me start, and then I'll ask Dr. Murray to chime in here. If you look back at the history of big advances in computing in this country, DOE has actually been in the lead for a number of them. The one that sticks in my mind was at the time we agreed to stop testing nuclear weapons, and we wanted to be able to simulate what happens as those devices operate in a way that we could assure ourselves that the stockpile was maintained in an appropriate way and that the deterrence would be there. The need for that advance in computing led to a big investment, which led to a quantum leap in computing power. Once that was available, of course, the scientific community said, well, heck, we can use this to do all kinds of cool stuff that we couldn't do before. This time around, the question you asked about the leadership in computing, we recognize that leadership in many fields is fundamentally makes use of the highest performance scientific computing. And therefore, we're investing, leading the way in the Office of Science with this investment. Now, it does have important applications in the weapons side of things, so there's a substantial commitment from NNSA as well. But the intent there is that we will continue to lead the world, and we will do that both by the speed of the machine, by the communications, because as you add processors and so on, the communication links matter, and in the energy efficiency side, because The power consumption, if it just goes up linearly with the number of processors, you soon need one of those small modular reactors next to each machine. So, the net result is that this is hugely important for us and for the nation and for everything we do.
So the bottom line is really what you have in our budget, if it's cut or if it's diminished, our ability to stay in front, our ability to compete, our ability to keep improving our computing power will be diminished.
I think that if we invest less, we get less.
Yes, I would add that what is in the budget for the next 4 years is research and development with industry to try to figure out what is it that is going to be the next, call it quantum leap, but it's really 12 orders of magnitude room. They actually brought in U.S. industry, including the semiconductor industry, the
Okay.
IBMs of the world, for example. And I just turned to a page in the book of my cheat sheet, which shows the plan for how we would get to exascale through developing bigger and bigger machines that are going to go to Oak Ridge, then Argonne, then Livermore, then Los Alamos, then Oak Ridge, then Argonne, and so forth. And Berkeley will be, the NERSC machine is upgraded regularly. Berkeley will have 30 petaflops, which is way beyond what we have today, by the end of 2016. And then it will be upgraded with the machines that we go to like 200 petaflops at Oak Ridge by 2018 timeframe. And then we need to go to exascale, but we learn by bigger and bigger computers. One of the things that's going to be different this time is that what was developed and what has been developed so far in the industry and in DOE are machines that are kind of, I call them vanilla. That is to say, they can do everything. They can do simulations. They can look at data sets, whatever. As we are going to exascale, we probably will need to have different architectures for different problems. And so the use-inspired machine development
Sure.
will be, for example, Large Synaptic Survey Telescope will have petaflops of data coming in per day. And so how do we deal with that is an extremely good and very interesting question that's, part of this effort.
The DOE, we asked the DOE to provide a report on the plan on developing the exascale computing system, and it was supposed to be developed within 180 days. Where are we on that report? And
I didn't know about that.
okay, can we get an update on that?
We'll get back to you on
We'll
that.
In his State of the Union message when he mentioned nanotechnology. So I had the pleasure of working with Chairman Bullard and developing that bill, and then it went over to the Senate and got passed out of Senate with about $3.7 billion worth of grants back in '03. And I had the pleasure of attending the groundbreaking dedication of the molecular foundry at Berkeley Lab, and I'll be joining them again, celebrating their 10th year anniversary. And it looks like nano research centers have made great progress in our enabling revolutionary science along with our computing powers. Could you describe how these national scientific user facilities are benefiting our understanding of nanoscience and benefiting the economy? And what does the future look like for these centers and for nanoscale science at the DOE generally? And what can Congress do to, these are all softball questions,
These,
support DOE's nanoscale science research centers?
Yeah, the thing that is a little bit different about the nanoscale research centers from our other user facilities is that there are scientists at the research centers that actually collaborate with the users who come in, and that's incredibly important, not only for the graduate students who don't know how to use the machines, but also for industry. So there are tremendous collaborations with industry. We cannot do exascale without the nanocenters, for example, because things, and particularly things in energy technologies, happen at the nanoscale. It's materials, it's chemistry, and they are truly essential. They are also oversubscribed. Right now, they are just flourishing, and I think, I am not absolutely certain, but I might ask Pat how many users there are, but I will hazard a guess that they're in the thousands, including quite a bit. Yes? Okay. 30,000, but that's.
About 2,000.
2,000, okay. 30,000 across the user facilities for Office of Science, but they are absolutely essential. So one of the things that a nano center did recently that I thought was incredibly cool is, and this is like, why didn't I think of that? Is reducing the wasted heat of an ordinary light bulb, and that was an Energy Frontier Research Center,
Sure.
as well as the Molecular Foundry, by putting nanoscale, call it photonic band gap structures, around the tungsten filament that reflect the infrared light back to the tungsten. So they have reduced the energy loss of a light bulb to better than what an LED is. That's really cool.
And it extends its life also, does it?
Don't know if it extends its life because the tungsten filament probably burns out a lot faster. However, what that means, this is using fancy photonic band gap science and nano centers and to do something that is, could affect a huge number of people.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask one more question. Using these,
Wait just a second before you ask one more question. I'm still trying to understand this. Why is this a benefit? Just out of curiosity, I mean,
Well-
if the filament burns out sooner, so you replace it sooner, I mean, you've reflected heat back, but big deal.
No,
It
it's-
used to warm up my house. Now I gotta have my
Yes.
electric heater running more to warm up my house.
Yes, so-
Because now that heat isn't going into my house
Well, your energy
with all the
efficiency
lights
goes up.
being on. I'm curious as to what benefit that is
So-
that we reflect it back to the filament.
I will answer that you live in Idaho.
Yeah.
If you happen to live in Florida, you would have great benefit because you wouldn't have to put your air conditioning on.
Well, that would be a mistake, living in Florida instead of Idaho. I'm just, no, go ahead.
So could I just jump in here
Yeah.
as long as we're poking fun at this?
I mean, I'm not saying it's not cool. I'm just
No,
saying,
I just
you
thought
know,
it was-
you could
No,
cook-
what's cool about it is that it increases the overall efficiency of how much electricity it takes to make light that it gets out into the room.
so it takes less electricity to light one of these light bulbs than it does a,
Yeah, or you get more light for the same amount of
Okay.
electricity. That's the idea. Now, cost, of course, is an issue here, and
Sure.
these are fancy materials, but it tells you the opportunities that fundamental science can have for these kinds of hybrid
Yeah.
interactions that really might pay off in a real way, even if we don't use it exactly in
yeah,
that form.
yeah.
that was pretty
ahead.
cool. You probably could cook potatoes faster too, right?
Doesn't take as much energy to cook a french fry. Go ahead.
The other question I had was kind of off subject, but using these technologies, the supercomputing, nanoscale, how close can we get, or how close are we at replicating photosynthesis? If we can do that, it seems to me that we could really move towards creating fuel without having going through the process of the billions and billions of years that takes for.
That certainly is a grand challenge. We are not there yet. life over billions of years has managed to do things that we don't know how to do yet. We do have an energy hub on exactly that, which is, can we take light from the sun and create fuels out of it? It is, I would say, I would hazard a guess, 20 years out. But as we study how life actually does this, and it's the same thing for a biofactory, we can maneuver, we can either make things that look like life, biomimicry, or we can take things that are alive, such as yeast cells, and have them begin manufacturing things.
But, look, taking these computational power and going down to nanoscale, merging together with the light source that Mr. Valadeo was talking about.
Yep.
It seems that we could compress that time.
You're right.
But we need research monies, but the investment will return much higher, it seems to me.
I agree. It is a grand challenge. Actually, a challenge of mimicking what life has been able to do is another grand challenge. Is not just, for example, creating fuels, but all sorts of things, self-replicating, for example.
Sure.
And we are on it. That's an important challenge for science.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Tempted to ask if we're getting close to a perpetual motion machine, but I won't. It is, I am frankly inadequate to sit in a hearing with this stuff because most of it I don't understand. It is, it's fascinating stuff, and it's good to go look at and all that kind of, and I really get excited about science just for science sake, but it is way above my comprehension level to a large degree. But let me ask you this. Seldom do we think about the Department of Energy when somebody wants to talk about the biological sciences. Usually think of Labor H, NIH, list them all, CDC, whatever. But you've been included in the BRAIN Initiative, the President's BRAIN Initiative, and the President's Cancer Moonshot. Explain to me how the Department of Energy, the Secretary yesterday touched on it briefly, but how is the Department of Energy going to be involved in what are fundamentally biological sciences here?
Well, I would just start by saying that we actually have been a long-term player in the biological interactions of some sort, mostly through the earliest work on radiation and what that did to living things. So we've had a very long effort there. In some ways, that's what led to the human genome, because as we tried to figure out what kind of bad things could happen with radiation damage to molecules, it was clear that one of the ways that you could cause damage was by damaging genetic material. So that led to efforts to figure out what was there and how it got changed. Of course, now that in turn is what makes so much of what's called precision medicine possible now. Now, the medicine part of that, definitely NIH, but with regard to things like how do we understand very complex interconnected neuron systems like the brain, that has a big computing element to it. And how do we understand huge data sets that involve genomic information and images and patient history and all kinds of things? How can we pull those together and use advanced computing and sort of unsupervised machine learning to
Unsupervised
Well, in other words, build software that can go look at all this data and extract patterns out of it and help us figure out ways to make use of information we gather about patients, for example, to help decide how to treat a particular cancer or how to avoid the conditions that led to it in the first place.
So these machines that can teach themselves, essentially?
That's part of the and because this is a class of problems that actually goes much broader than just biological implications. It creates an opportunity for us to learn how to do some things as part of the advanced computing and exascale exercise that will aid our whole exascale effort in the first place. So there is a legitimate role in here to do some things together with NIH that neither agency can pull off as well on their own, and so that's the part that we're looking for. Is that
when you a lot of the facilities that the department has are user-friendly facilities, but they're usually paid for under work for others. A lot of the activities.
some are. We provide the basic facility. But in some cases, for example, NIH comes in and we built the synchrotron and they've built some end stations that work on their kind of biological systems.
If I can interrupt for that, we provide competitively, so the users have to compete to use the facility, but once they are deemed scientifically competitive, the facility use is provided free. That's true for everyone except those who don't want to publish in the open literature and want proprietary information. You know, so businesses actually have to pay the cost of using the facility, but NIH researchers do not have to pay the cost of the facility.
Because it's a government facility. I
Well,
mean, government
because
Because we
organization,
provide
and
it and
it's for,
they're, you know, they're doing good science. They do have to pay the cost of, they being NIH, has to pay the researchers their time. We don't do that, but the facilities, including the computational facilities, are free of charge.
okay. Marcy?
Yes, as I'm listening to all this, Mr. Chairman, I keep looking at the budget request of $5,672,000,000. It's not a small budget.
True.
And I think about the panel we had in earlier in the week when we asked, what do you consider to be your major challenges in addition to the work you do? And basically it was those that will follow us. And how do we make science of interest to the next generation? And I keep rolling that over in my mind and looking at your budget and thinking to myself, can the Department of Energy be more relevant to the next generation than it currently is? Not that you're not irrelevant, you're not, because you have internships and you bring up talent, blah, and so forth. But I thought I would just put this in because I find Secretary Moniz most captivating. And he was up here before the committee the other day, and he's quite able to communicate. He has a very special gift. And so I'm asking you to be messengers back to the Department of Energy, thinking about all of your labs and how can we create programming that would be shared with our science centers. Cleveland has the Great Lakes Science Center. Toledo has Imagination Station. There are science centers around the country, or with public television. Does the Department of Energy have any role to play? Now, I have all these images of Dr. Moniz being a part of programming, like when there was a DVD called Finding Nemo a few years ago. It was the best-selling DVD of all time. And it was one of the two highest grossing G-rated films ever in our country. So I guess I could say Finding Ernie or Traveling with Ernie. And I could see part of this budget
His
He
next
would, he
job.
would like be inside the internal combustion engine that I saw at one of your labs in California, trying to figure out how propulsion really works. That registers in my part of the country where, you know, we have drag strips and cars are made and all. But you could make it fun. You could task each one of your labs. You got all these labs, over 24 labs. Every year, each of them would have to come up with 2 ideas that could be put to film, right? So when we then find him inside of algae in Lake Erie, and maybe going down with a snorkel and those things you put on your feet. What do you call those when
Flippers.
you swim? Flippers, right. So he's down there. Then I think about the laser beam projects that I've seen. And can you imagine, you know, up on a wind turbine up there at NRail? I mean, there's all kinds of places you could be finding Ernie or traveling with Ernie. And we need a modern-day Mr. Wizard. I was sort of auditioning you, Dr. Orr. And you have a wonderful voice, and you look a little bit like Dr. Wizard when I grew up, Mr. Wizard. When
Thanks,
I
I guess.
I thought he was a very good-looking man. He used to wear like tweed jackets, right? But I keep thinking about how do we reach out? Teachers could do this. You'd have DVDs. You could put, you know, public television could do it. We've got to do something to break through the clutter, and you have this fast, indecipherable world. It's like an planetary system to its own, and but it has such unmet potential to teach. That is not what you're authorized to do. That's at the Department of Education. They're not succeeding in their mission, so they need some help. And I'm not against them, but I see these assets that are not fully operationalized, and you've got intrigue. You've got unbelievable capacity. And there is a communications budget at DOE, and it wouldn't take that much. And obviously, the secretary has friends in high places like at Google, and they hand out all these keyboards and all this stuff, you know. There's really something that can be done. So I just want you to think about it. Just communicate a message back. That isn't really a question. I'd be pleased to yield to the gentleman.
What you bring up is kind of interesting, because one of the great shows of all time that I enjoyed and got me interested in a lot of stuff was Carl Sagan's Cosmos, which kind of took it down to almost understandable level with all this stuff, you know, and so, I mean, I've got it on DVD, I've got it on VHS, I probably got it on something else that we used to use, probably on disc or something, I don't know. Yeah. 8-track.
He could pop out of a
Probably got on
battery.
4-track.
So I can't resist saying that I love the idea of all of us sitting around thinking up things for the secretary to do.
Well, we could cast people in his like, but I say you have a gold mine. And I don't feel that gold mine. I can guarantee you, you talk about usage from Ohio, yeah, we got usage, but if you look at the number of people that you directly touch at your labs, it's a very small percentage of the American people. But you have a powerhouse inside those labs and inside your department, and the department is a rather, compared to the SBA, you don't meet the ground. You're into the future, but yet it's that intrigue that could captivate, I think, audiences, and we have platforms to display you. You just don't give yourselves to us in a way that is easily accessible to the American people. And I'm just pushing you a little bit to say, think about that. With a $5.67 billion budget, I think that we have the capacity to reach deeper into the country. So just, Dr. Murray, you're an educator. You are a researcher. You understand this. And we have to reach the next generation in a really fun way.
No, I think you're right that that we need to learn better how to tell stories about you know, if all of us, I mean, gosh, you can hardly cross the street now without using the GPS that's in your cell phone. But there's so many layers and threads of science woven into the ability to do that, that being able to tell stories about how the science that we kind of take for granted is actually done would be a good way to help get kids excited for doing this in the future.
I'll tell you, when I went out to one of your labs and I saw, based from the nuclear research that the department does, this filament, you couldn't even see it, but at the end of it, was a nuclear chip that is being developed to use in medical to irradiate bad cells, not the good cells, just the bad cells. And it was, I don't know how many years from development. But I thought, imagine if somebody at Cleveland Clinic, which is one of the institutes, imagine if those students could see that. Imagine if the Great Lakes Science Center in Cleveland could broadcast this. Can you imagine the number of people? Because it takes you into the future. And that's what you really do. And I think that's where young people would be attracted if you could somehow put a ring of folks around yourself to disgorge what's already in your purview. It's just locked up, and I'm going to get a little political now. We talk about 1% versus 99%. The 99%, large numbers of them, need to understand why you're relevant. And I think that this is a way to do it while we do the most important task, and that is to raise the next generation, to love science, to not be afraid of it, to understand how it relates to their lives, and to see that it's part of the magic that's going to help America and the world. And right now, it's locked up. It's really, I read in one piece of the testimony, 31,000 people, users or something. These must be direct users of the lab. Got 25 million people now or something. So the way political people look, the way I look at that is, there's a mismatch here between those that are creating the funds for the $5.67 billion to be transferred to the department and those that are directly involved. So I've made my point, but I just really, I want you to think hard about that. And I said that to the prior panel too. We need a modern day Mr. Wizard. We need that face. And if Nemo could do it, certainly an institution with billions of dollars and an interest in the future can help our country. So I'm just challenging your staff and those who are listening, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a couple of questions. First question on the isotopes program transition. Several years ago, the Department of Energy transitioned all isotope production programs to the Office of Science, a transition that was directed by the Congress a number of years prior. Can you briefly provide an update to those efforts?
I'm going to let Dr. Murray respond to
Okay.
that.
I have had one briefing on this, so I will provide as update as I can, and I can also give you more information.
Thank you.
But in 2009, Congress directed the isotope program to move to nuclear physics. And nuclear physics charged their advisory committee with, okay, so now we have the isotope program, what do we do? So they have so far created 2 strategic plans. The committee has a new updated strategic plan and has looked at what the isotope program is doing in 2015. The outside committee that looked at them was very pleased with the drawing from across the department, various either reactors or accelerators that can create various isotopes that are needed. The isotope program started from the Atomic Energy Act, so DOE has the remit to provide isotopes to industry or to scientists as needed by the U.S., but not in any competition with any industry partner who can create the isotopes themselves. It turns out there are not that many people that do this. You have to have a reactor or you have to have a very large accelerator. And so we are providing the isotopes that are necessary. One of the issues in the program, which you will see is in our FY17 budget, a small amount of money to start a facility to make stable isotopes. This is the first facility in 20 years. We have not had this possibility of making stable isotopes.
Dr. Cherry, if I may,
Yes.
is this the facility that's proposed at Oak Ridge?
Yes, it is.
Okay, very good. If I may, let me ask my follow-up. I appreciate you
Okay.
going there. We're on the same page. The request proposes to build a stable isotope production facility at Oak Ridge to produce medical isotopes and to provide inputs for commercial suppliers of isotopes. Can you please explain then why this new activity is needed and what this brings to the isotope program?
Yes, absolutely. So as it turns out, for the last 20 years, we have not had the capability in the U.S. to make stable isotopes. This turns out to be okay for the last 20 years, kind of okay, because we could either get them from Russia or we had them in little drawers in Oak Ridge. We are running out of things in drawers in Oak Ridge, and we are relying on Russia for our stable isotopes. One of them is kind of important. It's lithium-7. It is used in nuclear reactor coolants, and our industry needs it, and we cannot make it. So that's an issue. This facility will also make the isotopes that are around molybdenum-98 or molybdenum-100, which are used by NNSA, which is the agency that's responsible for the Moly-99 isotope. It's the one isotope that we don't create or provide. In order to actually get Moly-99, you have to start from somewhere. And one way of doing that is Moly-98 or Moly-100. This isotope is used for pretty much all cancer treatment and radiation therapy in hospitals.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Murray, we've touched on this earlier, but it's very important. The scientific user facilities supported by the Department of Energy Office of Science provide some of the most unique, powerful, cutting-edge tools to over 30,000 university, industry, and government scientists from all over the country. Given the importance of these user facilities to the Department of Energy's overall science mission, this committee directed the Basic Energy Science Advisory Committee to prioritize the next 3 to 5 major user facility upgrades or construction projects within the Basic Energy Sciences program. What is the current status of this effort, and has DOE provided any further direction or guidance to BSAC about implementing this requirement?
Yes, I provided, I think it was my first day of work, a letter to the chairman of BSAC with the charge. And the chairman of BSAC has created a subcommittee of BSAC to look at the charge. And the charge is exactly the same charge that we use for our project management of any major projects, including upgrades, which is this upgrade of, they're looking at 5 different proposed upgrades. Are these upgrades, is this upgrade going to produce world-class science? Do they have a good science case? And second, is this upgrade ready to go? Do they understand all of the engineering that they have to do, and have they thought through the design well enough that they could start actually doing real designs? That committee will report out in June, so I'm looking forward to that report.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I understand in my absence, there was a discussion about the issue of new facilities coming online and the problem of making sure you can pay for their operation. I would just associate myself with that conversation. I don't know if it got specific enough as to whether or not the agency is going to provide a 5-year plan to show how this is going to work out as far as the operation of these new facilities, but don't think that's a bad idea either to put that into context. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, the wanted to talk a little bit about tech transfer at Cyclotron Road. Our national labs are really an amazing resource to this country, both in the facilities that they house and in the quality of scientific talent that they attract. And we need better use of these resources to drive development in the private sector and make an impact on the energy industry. There's an innovative program at Lawrence Lab called the Cyclotron Road. And the Cyclotron Road is combining the best elements in Silicon Valley startups, the top talent, sense of urgency, and an all-in attitude and commitment with the tools and expertise of a Berkeley lab to help these technology entrepreneurs develop their cutting-edge clean energy technologies. And this is a type of partnership and innovation that we need to reinvigorate. Energy innovation, accelerate the commercialization of these new technologies. So what's the department's current plans for this program at the Berkeley Lab, and what's being done to expand the Cyclotron Road program to other facilities in other national labs?
Okay, well, let me start, and Dr. Murray can join in if she wishes. This has been an experiment that provides modest resources to let startups or small companies make use of the facilities, link up with a scientist at the lab that has an interest in the area, and make use of some of the incredible facilities that we have at the lab. So it's a little different from the transfer stuff out of the lab, but rather to create a conversation that we hope will be productive. I happened to be out for a meeting at Lawrence Berkeley here not too long back, and I had breakfast with a bunch of the young folks who were working on this scheme, and they were uniformly enthusiastic about both the scientific opportunity, but the chance to put some interesting questions in front of the scientists at the lab, who of course got interested in what they're doing, and so a good interchange all the way around. I know that the other lab directors are looking over the fence to see where something like that might work at their labs as well, and that's a conversation we're trying to encourage as part of our broader discussions with the Office of Technology Transition. So, experiment in progress, conversation underway, and I think you'll see more of that going forward.
You'll keep us updated on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If there are no other questions, Dr. Orr, we've taken your whole day.
I think that's what I get paid for.
We apologize for taking your whole day, but you guys all do exciting work, and it's like I say, I wish I was smart enough to ask some questions because you do really neat stuff, and it's fascinating to go out and see what you do and kind of have it explained to me when I'm there, and then an hour later, I'm kind of going, now, what the heck was that? But I'm glad there are smart people like you in the world that are making advances to make the world a better place for all of us. And like I say, sometimes I just want to sit down by a fire with a good book and forget about all this stuff, because I tell my wife all the time, I'm glad I'm not going to live too much longer because the world is changing so rapidly, I'm not sure I could keep up with it. And I look at a kid going to high school today, or grade school today, what's going to change in their lifetime? How are they going to keep up with it? I mean, it's fascinating stuff. I love the commercial on TV where the grandkids stop by the grandfolks' house and they rush out to welcome them there with the trays of all of their appliances and hand them to them and say, these don't work, It's for the kids to fix them, And that's kind of the way I'm at that these don't work anymore stage. But I appreciate all you do, and it's good to work with you, and we look forward to working with you on putting together this year's budget. So keep up the good work. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much.
We're adjourned.
You haven't seen that commercial?
It's foodie.
Yeah.
Great.